propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCP chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, planet.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight outside SCE off. Say again, SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to NASA Spaceflight's live coverage of the first Rocket Lab Electron launch from the United States. You are looking live at Launch Complex 2 at the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, and you can see the small little Electron rocket there on the pad, already filled with RP-1 kerosene and liquid oxygen, and get ready for a launch window that opens in just over 40 minutes from now, the first time this type of rocket is slated to lift off from here in the United States. I'm going to head over to chat and see if y'all can hear and see just okay. And I'm seeing some 5x5s in chat. Maybe. Potentially.
1x5 right now. Thomas.
Maybe a little 1x5.
A lot of
Yes.
lag I'm seeing.
Stand by.
I'm going to blame YouTube for this one.
Yeah. Because even mine's still buffering.
YouTube's telling me good connection now, so we should be good to go. Folks, you may have to refresh. Put that into chat if you could, but it looks like we are good to go now.
Yep, I
see
just
5
refreshed
by
and it's much
5s.
better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, chat is exploding with 5x5s. All right, this looks better.
All right. Hashtag blame YouTube. Everything checked out fine until we hit go live, and then it started stuttering and complaining about not getting enough data, and then we bonked YouTube on the head and we're good to go. All right.
All right. Nothing
Continue.
a little live chat engagement can't fix. All right, folks. Sorry about that.
Should I roll the intro again? Like, 1, 2, like,
At like double speed.
yeah. Okay, Tom, back to you.
No worries. Thank you, Dust, for working that. And chat, hello. Let's try this one more time. You are still looking live at Launch Complex 2 for the first ever Rocket Lab Electron launch from here at Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. I say here, I'm not there. I will introduce who is there in just a second, but thank you all so much for tuning into today's launch. And I'm seeing the 5x5, so we're all good to go. I will go around the horn and introduce your NSF broadcasting crew for today. You did hear the voice of Das earlier. He's pushing buttons, pulling levers. He'll probably chime in with a snide remark every once in a while. But Das, thank you for operating today's stream as well. On the commentary team today, we've got Ian Atkinson, NSF editor and writer. Ian, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Excited to see another rocket come out of Wallops. Been looking forward to this for many years now, and I'm sure we're going to discuss that in a few minutes.
Absolutely. A long-awaited mission for sure. Out there in the field, I want to introduce the person crewing this camera right now. Pat, our good friend who has rolled out to a couple Wallops launch attempts with us before, is out there once again for today's Electron launch. Patrick, how are you doing?
Doing wonderful. It is an absolutely gorgeous evening tonight. We have unbelievable views, as you can see, and it's a super exciting day. Let's try to get this thing off the ground.
Absolutely. It's a cool evening out there, I'm sure, but Pat has rolled out and is providing us with this camera view. So super grateful for Pat for rolling out and allowing our live coverage today. And then one last voice to introduce on the stream, Sawyer Rosenstein, another contributor here at NSF. Sawyer, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Absolutely. I'm doing fantastic. Very excited to see the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport up and running again with another new rocket.
Absolutely, yeah. So there are actually 2 launch pads in this view, and one of them has seen a little bit more use than the other so far, though I think that's about to change. If you look on the left-hand side of your screen, I'm Thomas Burkhardt, by the way. I'm the news director around here. I don't know if I said that, but if you don't know my voice, that's who I am. But on the left-hand side of the screen, you see those 4 towers, and we wonder what they're for. No, that is the launch pad for the Antares rocket that Northrop Grumman operates. It is used to launch the Cygnus cargo vehicle to the International Space Station. Only one more of the current Antares configuration left before that rocket's actually retired. But that is the Antares launch pad, and then you've got the big old water tower that supports the sound suppression systems and things like that at this launch complex, including, I think, both of these pads, some shared commodities there. And then, of course, you have the Electron rocket, which is the smaller black and white rocket with the sharper nose cone up top. And that is our Rocket Lab rocket for today. Obviously, this is a small sat launch vehicle. It's a lot smaller than some of the other rockets we like to stream around here, but we like it nonetheless. And today's mission is going to be carrying 3 different satellites for a company called HawkEye 360 to low Earth orbit, and will be the first of several missions to launch from this new launch pad. So let's start on that front. Of course, we're going to bring in questions and things like that. So chat, if you got questions about what's going on today, definitely tag us at NASA Spaceflight in chat, and I'll bring those in over the course of the stream. But as those start to come in, let's go with a brief overview. So Ian, want to talk to us a little bit about the significance of this is the first mission from this launch pad. What's up with that?
Yeah, so this is the first mission from LC2, which is Rocket Lab's first launch pad in the United States and their second launch pad overall, or actually third launch pad overall between LC-1A and 1B. Now this, of course, as we said, is at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, which is quickly becoming a hub for Rocket Lab activity. Now they announced this launch site back in 2019. They broke ground the same year, and by the end of 2019, so within 1 year, they had this launch site completely built along with the integration facility. Now you can't see the integration facility here on the screen because it is a few miles back from the camera, actually, near a sort of industrial area in the Wallops area. But yeah, so this is Rocket Lab's first launch from this new complex. Like Thomas said, this is carrying 3 HawkEye 360 satellites into orbit. Now these are going to be injected into a circular 550 kilometer orbit, which is inclined by 40.5 degrees. Now, these 3 satellites form Cluster 6, which is, as the name suggests, is the 6th group of 3 satellites for HawkEye 360. Now, all these satellites are going to eventually form a constellation of 60 satellites around the Earth, allowing HawkEye to do signals intelligence. Basically, they're going to be able to monitor UHF, VHF, X-band, L-band, GPS jamming. Basically, a lot of signals information can be gathered with these satellites. It's helped with the Ukraine crisis and events leading up to that, and it can really be useful to see what is happening on the ground signal-wise and radio-wise. So 3 of those satellites are launching on here from Electron. This is the first time these satellites are flying on Electron, as all 5 previous missions have flown actually on Falcon 9 rideshare missions. So very exciting first mission here from Wallops for Rocket Lab.
Awesome. And we're, of course, going to be providing some updates on the status of the countdown. You see the countdown is currently just ticking past the T-minus 33 minute mark. And the targeted T0 currently is 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the dot. That's the opening of a 2-hour-long launch window. So they do have some room to mess with if weather or a technical item comes up or a range issue, anything like that. But no reports so far, and the Rocket Lab teams are actually currently in the polling process. So they're looking at all of the different things that could obviously affect the readiness to launch, and we're expected to get a report of whether they are go or no-go here shortly.
Which we have one quick update on that.
Yeah, go for it.
We were aware just before we went on the air that there was a boat that reportedly broke down on the hazard area. So right now, range is technically red, but they expect it to go into the green and are continuing to target the top of the window at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, so to summarize that for those who may not be familiar with the technicalities behind a foul range or something like that, it's not just as simple as if a boat or a plane or whatever is within a closed off hazard area, then the range is red and you can't proceed. If that hazard is confirmed to be like on a path or on a trajectory that will clear from the area in time for the launch, they can say, yes, the range is currently red, but is tracking green, and therefore you can continue with your launch preps. And that's where we're at. They're aware of this broken down boat, and it is not expected to be a factor, and they'll confirm that just before liftoff, that it did clear in time, but they will go through that. And I think, Pat, you're there on the ground. Do you have any other further updates on the range status from that perspective?
They just did confirm over the countdown net that the range is now green. The previous issue with the boat is no longer a problem.
Excellent. So there you go. The range has gone green, and of course that's more than 30 minutes ahead of time. So Pat, thanks for that update. And also getting some other updates as Rocket Lab finishes their polling. The weather is currently green and expected to remain green at T0. And also no word of any technical items being worked. So it sounds like the polling has gone well if they're not just wrapping that up now. And no items currently that we're tracking then that would suggest any sort of delay. So it's targeting the opening of the window and all looks good so far. We'll keep those updates coming. But until then, let's dive into some questions, shall we?
Absolutely.
Let's see. All right, we got a question here from Souls who says, do satellite manufacturers have to build in some safety margin for their satellites in case they're on the pad for an extended period of time? That could, of course, be relevant to this mission, which was delayed a couple months. They tried back in December and ran into some weather issues and then standing down for some range airspace closures that they had to deal with. And this is their first attempt in the new year. How did the satellite manufacturers handle that as far as dealing with those launch delays, Sawyer?
So yeah, a lot of it comes down to the fact that they were also able to roll this one back into its facility at the time. So when it's out at the pad, though, it is connected to ground systems there. So that includes all of the thermal protections, air conditioning, things like that to keep the satellite basically how it should be when it's on the ground in a comfortable position. So a lot of it right now, while it's sitting at the pad, is done through the ground support equipment.
Right, and a lot of times, especially during countdowns, you'll hear a call it that the spacecraft is now on internal power, which means they have removed the connection between whatever ground power supply exists to the payloads. They've severed that connection, and that the spacecrafts are just operating on their batteries, and that's usually only a couple minutes before launch or so. And the margin of battery that a satellite has includes whatever they would need to get from liftoff all the way until they can deploy solar panels and start generating their own power again, which definitely varies based on the flight profile. A low Earth orbit launch takes 10 minutes max. In fact, I check and look at the mission timeline for today, and payload deploy here is 57 minutes after launch because there's a big coast phase to circularize the orbit. It reaches orbit at 9 minutes after launch, but there's a coast phase to raise the orbit a little bit more before they deploy. Regardless, the satellite manufacturers will have more than an hour's worth of battery should that be needed. So there you go. Bringing in some more messages here. We got some people sending support our way, and of course these streams can't happen without it, so we do want to thank those folks. Tom S. became a Red Team member, so we greatly appreciate that. And then Silky offered us some support along with a question, and it's a good one. Have there been any missions from Mars, aka the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, to Mars, the planet?
Yeah.
So this
Unfortunately,
mission,
no.
yeah, I don't think so. However, been missions beyond low Earth orbit.
Right, there was one mission to the moon, and that was the Laddie mission back in 2013.
And it almost was another one. That Capstone mission that Rocket Lab launched last year from New Zealand was originally scheduled to launch from this launch site, but there were delays getting the flight termination system software for Electron certified and ready to go to launch from this range, so they moved that mission to New Zealand. So there was almost another one, but none to Mars, I don't think. To clear out some of this naming confusion, because it does get a little complicated. So today's mission is from a Launch Complex 2, which is within it's within two different ranges. The Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport is the name for the commercially operated spaceport, which definitely applies more to Electron than it does to Antares, for example. But it's also within NASA's Wallops Flight Facility, which is the NASA range. And in fact, if you look on the water tower, you see two logos on the tower. One's the NASA logo, and the other one, which you can't really tell because it's probably not as obvious, but that's the Mars logo. And so it's two different kind of organizations that both jointly operate the range, I think is the easiest way to describe it. But yeah, so there you go. Good question. Let's bring in some others. And here is a great one from Nicholas who says, will the plume make a jellyfish effect tonight due to its timing, or do only SpaceX vehicles do that? Don't think it matters what vehicle it is, right, Ian?
Yeah, if the conditions are right, and it looks like based on the fact that the sun is setting right now, or has set at this point, there may be a bit of an Electron jellyfish. Now, I don't really think we've seen many of those with Electron before, so I don't know what would be in store for that, how big it would be, things like that. But either way, I'm now very excited to possibly see a tiny rocket do maybe a big jellyfish in the sky.
We've definitely seen images from New Zealand of launches that have been around jellyfish time, and Electron can certainly do a jellyfish of its own. Because remember, when we talk about the jellyfish effect, that's the exhaust from the rocket getting backlit by sunlight, and it's most visible when the ground is dark, but the rocket flies high enough to still be in sunlight, which is near sunset or sunrise. And we've seen that from New Zealand for sure. And since it's the exhaust getting backlit, the size of the rocket doesn't actually super matter because it's just the gases from the engines, which will expand to a huge cloud of gas no matter what size of the rocket is. And based on the timing, I just looked up the sunset time for tonight is 5:16, so it's a little under 45 minutes from the opening of the window. So it's not like perfect jellyfish time, but maybe during the second stage burn, it'll get far enough and high enough that we could see some jellyfish. So I definitely wouldn't rule it out. I'm going to stay tuned and find out. Definitely some potential there. Another question here from Ultima asking about a different Rocket Lab rocket that's coming online and will also launch from here at Wallops, wondering if the Neutron rocket is manufactured in Virginia, California, or New Zealand. Sawyer, where's Neutron being built?
So Neutron, it's interesting the way that it works, I should say, with production in general. So this is all being produced for everything at the Wallops Flight Facility and Mars. They will most likely end up doing it there, but they can manufacture these rockets, including Electron, in 3 different places. They can manufacture them in their other launch site at Mahia, New Zealand. They manufacture some of them over at Long Beach, where their headquarters is in California, and now obviously Wallops as well. So a lot of times they will even ship them from one location to another for that specific launch. So
Just piping in here real quick. Rocket Lab is actually building a dedicated, well, actually not a dedicated, the Neutron manufacturing plant about, if I have the location of this camera correctly, about like a quarter mile away from where this camera is situated.
It's very close. You like drive past it.
Yeah, you literally drive past it to get to the press site of Wallops. So they're building a dedicated build site there. Currently, right now, it's just a big tent, kind of Boca Chica style, I guess, but they plan to have a big facility there. The Electrons for Wallops are being built elsewhere and then shipped in pieces. They ship the engine section, tanks, all that stuff separately, then assemble those together in the integration facility. So that's how they do it at Wallops.
Yep. Let's see. Bringing in some more questions here. Musical Wolf saying, will we see a tank activate or launch every day this week? Well, yesterday we definitely had some active tanks down at Starbase, Texas. That's where the attention was. Is there something going on tomorrow? I think we skipped something tomorrow. Oh no, there's a Japanese launch tomorrow. That counts. So there's a Japanese H-2A rocket tomorrow. There's a Falcon 9 launch on Thursday. I don't know about Friday. I don't think there's anything going on Friday. Currently, obviously schedules can change. But it is keeping us busy this week for sure. Thanks for the support there, Musical Wolves. Let's see. Wolfram, thank you for some support as well. Much appreciated. And Musical Wolves again saying that it's cool that the water tower has the NASA meatball. I completely agree. Best NASA logo.
Thomas,
I agree.
You are objectively wrong, Thomas, but it's okay. We all make mistakes.
Team Meatball all the way, so you're the one making the mistake.
You're outnumbered. Sorry, Ian. Let's see. Here's a question from Joshua saying, how far away from the pad can you get to the rockets? Wait, hold on. How close to the rocket can you get? Or how far away can you see the rocket? I'm not sure the angle to this question.
I think how close to the pad can you get to see the rocket from Wallops?
Yeah, so I'll say this site is what? Pat, maybe you know. Is this like 2 miles away or so? Or if I round it to 2?
It's about 2 miles, maybe 2.1, something like that.
I think we're going to get some DOS art maybe showing more specifically.
Locally, there's another spot that you can get a little bit closer than that. So right about 2 miles is how close you can get.
Yeah, it's actually just right about 2 miles. There we go. Thank you, DOS. So that's how close this camera is, and this is, of course, the press site. We have to be escorted on. But there are also, I do remember there is a public viewing spot at Wallops that is basically the same distance by the old ferry dock there. It is right on the map. And those spots are ever so slightly closer or about the same. There you go. Thank you, DOS. So you can get about 2 miles away from both the Electron and Antares pads, because as you can see, they're basically right next to each other. And good viewing spots at Wallops for sure.
And actually, while we were just discussing Neutron, the Neutron launch pad will be located from that map south of Pad 0B. It's technically called Pad 0C in some planning documents, but I don't think there's been any official Rocket Lab naming of it so far.
Yeah, I'm sure Rocket Lab will give it its own designation later on. As Ian mentioned, this is the third launch pad and the second launch range for Rocket Lab, I guess is the correct way to say it. Launch Complex 2, but there's also Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand, and that has two pads, LC-1A and 1B. So the third launch pad, but second launch complex, if that
And
makes sense.
just for reference, they do plan on having Launch Complex 3, but that will primarily be for a landing zone for Neutron, which is designed to be reusable.
Yep, there you go.
So if you want to get confused, Rocket Lab is launching Electron from both Wallops and Mars. This is pad LC2 and LC0C. I don't know.
Yeah. Let me see here. Next question. Here's a good one. I think we have another asset to show for this. Geraldine wants to know, can we update if the launch will be visible inland from the coast? I believe, actually, and Wallops does a really good job at this. We've got this launch visibility map that'll show you basically at what point in flight the rocket should be visible, from the naked eye if you look towards Wallops. And of course, this depends on weather. So if there are clouds in the way, obviously this does not account for that. But if you have a clear sky, you should definitely look towards Wallops, which is, of course, near, kind of on the border of Virginia. It's in Virginia, but near Maryland as well. And you can see based on these color rings how long ahead of flight. So if you're in that blue band there, thank you, Das, you should be between 120 and 150 seconds. So just over 2 minutes into flight is when it should be high enough that you see it. And of course, hope the sky is clear because a lot of people live in those bands. Obviously, a lot of metropolitan areas in this part of the country. And so hopefully a lot of you will get a view. Electron is small, but it is still a rocket and it is still bright. So you should be able to pick it out of the sky should weather cooperate. I wish you all the best of luck. And definitely let us know if you catch a glimpse because it'll be cool.
I'm surprised that Charlotte's on there. Like normally Charlotte's not on there. So y'all don't mind if I run outside at lunch and try to see if I can see it.
As long as the stream doesn't break while you leave.
I'm not doing anything important, right?
By the way, just for reference to those who are trying to figure out exactly where that is, the closest location, if you know the area, is called Chickateague Island. So
yes,
very famous for bird watching and now different kind of bird watching.
Yes, definitely. And worth mentioning also, I think we mentioned that the visibility map is slightly wider than normal. Almost all of the launches from here at Wallops have been Antares carrying Cygnus to the space station. They go into a low Earth orbit, and Cygnus maneuvers its way up a little higher to get to the ISS altitude. Every once in a while, there are Minotaur launches, pretty rarely, and they also go to low Earth orbits usually. This mission is going to a slightly higher low Earth orbit, which I think we discussed before going live, actually, that we suspected that may have resulted in a wider viewing area just because the rocket will fly a slightly steeper trajectory. Still going to low Earth orbit, though.
Yeah, the primary launches from here as well that they do a lot of are sounding rockets, so suborbital.
Yeah, and those are obviously much less visible. But some of them fly pretty high. They just don't fly as long. And a lot of times, by the time they get high enough, they're actually just coasting up to altitude. So there we go. Getting some pad cams now of the rocket. You can see the ice and venting as is nominal. Mike, many of the rockets we stream live here on NASA Spaceflight, the propellants on Electron are nice and cool. You got RP1 kerosene and liquid oxygen. Both chilled, I think. I think they densify their kerosene, don't they?
They do not.
No, they don't. My sincere apologies.
I think SpaceX is really a pioneer in that field and have not been caught up to yet.
You know, if I actually look closer at the left-hand side, you would see where the tank stops because there's tank section that isn't frosty. And if I'd used my brain, I would have figured that out just then. But yeah, okay, so there you go. So the frosty sections are your liquid oxygen tank because obviously oxygen to be liquid needs to be cold. But the parts that are not frosted over are where the kerosene sits. So there you go.
Yeah. If I can point out, this rocket is normally entirely black.
Yes.
So it is a carbon fiber composite material that makes up the rocket itself. So everything you see that's white is all frost. And by the way, if we're talking about the size of the rocket, I just want to point out how short this thing actually is. The total height is 18 meters or just under 60 feet. So, and it's about a meter in diameter, 1.2.
Can we compare that to another rocket? Like that fits inside Falcon 9's payload fairing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Falcon 9's fairing is like 12 meters long, but the extended fairing, absolutely.
Well, I guess the extended fairing. Okay. Well, yeah. I'm trying to put this in the context of another rocket that we see more often.
Yeah, here's a reference. So it's almost 70 feet tall on this one. Falcon 9 is 70 meters, which is 230 feet tall.
Yeah, okay. So
you're talking,
smaller.
230 feet tall versus 59 feet.
And that water tower there, for reference, is 307 feet tall.
Oh, wow. Wait, so Falcon 9 is taller than that water tower?
No, the water tower right there is 94 meters tall.
Oh,
So
sorry.
Falcon 9's probably just a little bit taller than Antares' lightning rods, which are just
Okay.
the level of the tower.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
The normal.
imagine
Ian.
the water tower is SLS.
Okay.
Good reference.
The normal comparison we make is that the Electron is about as high as one of the folded up landing legs on the Falcon 9.
There we
So if you
go.
put them
There we
next
go.
to each other, Electron is about the side of the landing leg. And I was looking at Fleet Cam, but you can't quite see the landing legs on Fleet Cam right now. I was going to try and put it up side by side.
Okay.
Yeah,
Appreciate
can't
it.
quite do it. I'm trying.
But there you go. That puts the size into the context there. Thank you, Sawyer and Ian, for that.
One thing I love about Wallops. Go ahead, Thomas.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love the lighting scheme here. They've opted for an all red lighting scheme. I don't know if there's honestly like any specific technical like engineering.
There is.
I know.
For that.
Sawyer, go for it.
The reason is turtles. All because of turtles. It has to do with sea life in the area that nest on the beach. And there's a thing that after dark, you can't have the bright white lights because otherwise it would attract them to that instead of where they need to go to lay their eggs and then back to the ocean.
Very cool. Also, with the red lights, that'd be perfect for an observatory out there because red light keeps your night vision.
There you go. Also, I do have a very important update here from Peter Beck, the Rocket Lab CEO, who just tweeted, "Time to fly." So sounds like things are still on track, and we're just under 15 minutes away. So we're going to do a couple more questions here before we get to the business end of the countdown. Rob, we touched on this briefly, just to reiterate. How far is this camera from the pad? We're just about 2 miles away at the press site here for tonight's launch. Ripa has some support and says, "I'm just here for the intro, roll it again." Well, now you got to stick around to the end of the stream because we'll roll it as the outro. So you're stuck here now. Appreciate the support, though. Fiona with the Kiwi and the New Zealand, a good reference to a Rocket Lab there. Appreciate that. And then here is a good question from John saying, "Are they planning on being able to retrieve the booster from the ocean like they have many of their rockets?" I believe that is a down the road plan, but on this particular flight, is there any recovery plan, Ian?
Nope, there's no recovery plan on this flight. And from Wallops in general, they've said that they are not really looking into recovery because I don't know if we mentioned this, but Wallops is going to be sort of a auxiliary launch site. This will not be a primary launch site for Electron. They'll just do a handful of launches here a year. They're focusing on recovery out of New Zealand. So maybe if they get their flight rate up here someday, they could opt for recovery, but it seems like they don't find it worth it to recover from Wallops.
Yeah, and I think they also mentioned that at the very least, before they even consider bringing it here, they'd want to prove it in Wallops or in New Zealand where they have that higher flight rate. So if it becomes a proven system and then they can just scale it to the Wallops launches, I think they go that route. However, it's not a near-term plan. Thank you. Couple of other messages here. Jeremy brought in some support as well. Very much appreciated. Not sure about. That might be the Arbekel Neck Road, which I think was the other site, Das, you were circling on the map there, right?
Yeah, that's the
It's like
closest.
the closest one.
Yeah, it's like 1 in a 1.75 or something like that. Or
Yeah, there you go.
something. Yeah.
Not sure we have any official information on whether that's open tonight, but if it was for Antares, I would imagine the exclusion zones are basically the same. So it should be, but obviously consult your local authorities. Don't want to quote me on that.
Yeah, Arbuckle Neck is open for Electron.
There we go, nice.
Like they said here, after the Antares failure. Before it was open, but because of the risk of the sound and the shockwave, they closed Arbuckle Neck, so the ferry docks were the closest for Antares.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a couple of ways to pronounce that, I guess.
Yeah.
Modi Space Industry says Virginia is for worm lovers, but still appreciate the Thomas fan club and the meatball. Modi Space, appreciate the support as always.
Those who don't get the reference, by the way, this they name all of their launches. This one is called Virginia is for Launch Lovers, a play on the Virginia is for Lovers slogan of the state.
Hey, y'all, real quick, it looks like Rocket Lab's going to go into the final poll here. The announcer on their stream just said that they were about to do that, so I'm going to try to pipe that in here for y'all.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll listen in to see the poll, and I'll stop talking if I hear it for sure.
Yeah, good deal. Thanks.
Because what they're going to be going into is a final go no-go poll. Obviously, they check all of their technical systems. They'll check range readiness, weather readiness, things like that.
Final poll for launch. Go no-go sequence. Stage.
Stages go.
Avionics.
Avionics is go.
GNC.
GNC is go.
VCon.
VCon is go.
T1.
T1 is go.
GC.
GC is go.
PLS.
PLS is go.
Mars CE.
Mars CE is go.
Mars Ops.
Mars Ops is go.
Mars 1. Didn't copy Mars 1.
Come on, Mars 1.
Copy Mars 1, go. NASA GSO.
GSO go.
NASA RSO.
RSO is go.
MM.
MM is go.
LD SUP.
LD Sup is go.
NASA TD.
NASA TD is go.
Okay, the go, no-go sequence is complete. We are T minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds and counting.
And of course, the countdown coming in on a slightly delayed stream, so they're actually less than 10 minutes to go now. But you heard the final go, no sequence, or the go, no-go sequence was complete, and all stations reported go. So proceeding as planned, we are getting close to the business end of the countdown. So before we get there, I want to thank everyone who sends support to the stream and make it happen. And if you're looking for one more way that you can support the NASA Spaceflight team, heading over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com is definitely a great way to do it, because you get something more than just supporting the team. You get something cool from it, whether that's merch in the form of wearable merch and stuff like that, or if you go to a metal print, grab a calendar. There's a lot of cool things. I know some of our newest stuff is in the metal prints category. If you were watching the Starship wet dress rehearsal with us last night, got some new photos already from that just yesterday, are now available for as metal prints. Get the NSF hat that Das is confirmed. Das wears. I've never seen Das not wearing a hat, so I'm not sure I can agree with that Das art. But either way, much appreciated. And yeah, so if you're looking for a way to support what we do, all of this goes directly into supporting our coverage and improving it for you all, and helping the equipment that Pat's using and stuff like that. So if you want to support our coverage, heading over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com is a great way to do so, and we greatly appreciate anyone who does. Also, if you do it, it shows up in the top right of the screen now, so you get to photobomb the streams if you order while we're live. Actually, it'll show up on the 24/7 streams too, so actually you can do that whenever you want. But thank you everyone who sent support, and do a couple more questions here as we get to the business end of the countdown. A little bit over 8 minutes to go. Let's see. Nikon in Space says, short explanation, welcome to Mid-Atlantic Spaceport. Mid-Atlantic is mid-coast and mid-coast is best coast. All right. I would argue this is the same coast as Florida, and this is all East Coast, best coast. I'm not going to slander Wallops, but we all know it's better than Vandenberg.
East Coast, Beast Coast?
Beast Coast? There you go.
Yeah.
And Roseanne, I'll try to answer this question briefly, asking if we all have day jobs. Any chance we could support you well enough for NSF to be its own company? Some of us do other things. Some of us are full-time. Depends on who you're talking to. But we're all obsessed with space, so it consumes our lives regardless. We greatly appreciate all of the support you do send, though, because it goes a long way. And then, oh, geez, we got a question or a super chat here from someone called the ground umbilical carrier plate. It's a good thing Chris isn't on the stream. Sawyer, you're going to get.
I'm twitching.
Yeah, Sawyer's going to have a visceral response to that name. No hydrogen involved today, so we don't have to worry about it.
Thank God.
Appreciate the support there, Guck P, and appreciated. Let's see, what other questions can we do? Das, can we show the viewing map one more time for those who might just be tuning in? Get a lot of questions from that. Michael here is asking about what about the viewing map. There you go. So if you're in any of these color bands, Wallops and Rocket Lab claim that you should be able to see it, weather permitting. So if you got a clear sky and you live in these bands, take a look towards the border of Virginia and Maryland and get a look at Electron. It's going to be flying slightly southeast. It's going to a 40-degree inclination, or 40.5-degree inclination. So not due east, slightly south, but it'll be flying out over the ocean, and that's the way to look. And again, it could be anywhere from right after liftoff to like 2 minutes or so after launch. That graph is also on NASA Wallops' Twitter if you need to pull it up later for reference.
By the way, I do want to apologize earlier to all of our friends in New Zealand. I did put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable when it came to Mahia. So
there you go.
Putting that out there. Apologies, everyone.
And one last couple questions here, because we focused a lot about the new launch site, the rocket and stuff like that, but we should, of course, also talk about the mission of the satellites on board. So you want to give us just a quick rundown on what these 3 satellites from HawkEye 360, what their mission is once they reach orbit after today's launch?
Sure. The goal of the HawkEye 360 system is to basically look at radio frequencies, all the different RF bands. According to the company, they say that the goal is basically to be able to go in there and find where all of these signals are coming from. That way, if there's any interference that may be overloading, say, a cell phone network, or if there's someone trying to maliciously attack something like a GPS satellite, they're able to kind of pinpoint those frequencies of where there may be some overlap and notify those companies of, hey, don't cross the streams, basically, and essentially make all of the radio frequencies for the companies that use them more effective, so that when it comes down to you, the user, everything actually works.
Yep, there you go. And this is not the first mission of these satellites. A lot of the previous clusters, 5 previous clusters of these satellites, have launched as rideshare payloads on SpaceX Falcon 9 missions. This is the first of 3 that are contracted to launch on Rocket Lab's Electron rocket. And I believe the other 2 will also be launching from here at Wallops. And so you'll see more of these missions going forward. But there we go. Not an uncommon name in the satellite world, but for those who may not be familiar, there is your HawkEye 360 rundown. Have a quick question here from Tim, wondering if we have cameras for the New Zealand launches, and the answer is no. This is why you don't often see Rocket Lab launch broadcast here on the NSF channel, because we're not going to just restream the official webcast and talk over it. We only want to go live if we have our own camera view to provide, and we can help out, kind of augment the official coverage with our own independent coverage. So we want to give a huge thank you to Rocket Lab for hosting media for this launch. We were here back in December for the previous launch attempt as well. And just a huge thank you to Rocket Lab for inviting media on base for this. Hope we can continue doing this for all of the upcoming Wallops launches. And yeah, it's great. We'll bring in the Rocket Lab cameras as needed too as it goes downrange. But for now, these are our own crewed camera. Thanks to Pat again for rolling out. And yeah, there we go.
Do I have 30 seconds for something really quick?
Yep.
I saw someone asking the question about the thrust related to these. So each of the 9 Rutherford sea-level engines produce about 5,600 pounds of thrust per engine, so times 9. For reference, the current Merlin 1D sea level is 190,000. So just for reference in terms of how small this rocket is and the power of those engines, but it still makes it to orbit.
That's true. We don't often talk about the Electron rocket in detail because, again, we're not usually having our own camera crew out at the launches because, unfortunately, none of us live in New Zealand. But there are 9 engines on the first stage, arranged very similarly to the more often seen Falcon 9 rocket. 1 central engine, 8 around the outside, sort of an octaweb kind of situation. And that number is pretty common in rockets these days simply because it gives you a good ratio between stage 1 thrust and stage 2 thrust if you just have the same type of engine. And the upper stage on this rocket is no different. It's got a single vacuum optimized engine, and the name of the engine is Rutherford, and it's named that because they are electric pump fed. So an ode to the pioneer in the field of electricity. So vacuum optimized Rutherford on the upper stage, and 9 sea level Rutherfords on the first stage. And there's also a kick stage powered by a Curie engine. That'll be the one that coasts for about 40 minutes or so after the second stage shuts down, before using that stage and that kick stage to raise its orbit. And that kick stage has a lot of hardware commonality with the Photon satellite bus that Rocket Lab has also launched a couple times and talked about. And so if you hear about that satellite bus, it's actually very similar to just the kick stage that Electron uses.
Yep, and that produces 120 newtons of thrust when it's in space.
There you go. We mentioned that the rocket is carbon composite, carbon fiber all the way through. That is often adds some complexity or added cost to the manufacturing process, but it offers a very light and high strength material.
I'm going to interrupt for a quick sec. Auto sequence should have started at this point, so onboard computer's taken over.
Perfect. Thank you, Sawyer. And we're under 2 minutes to go now, so into the auto sequence, and confirmed auto sequence has started. But yeah, so the carbon composite makes it very light but very strong, often used in aerospace, and Electron is a good example here. And the fuel type is Kerolox, so kerosene and oxygen, very similar to the Falcon 9 or the first stage of Atlas V, many other rockets as well. But under 90 seconds to go here, so we're going to put a hold on the questions. We'll come back to those later if we got time, but we're going to start paying attention to Electron as we're just over a minute away. This is, again, the first time an Electron rocket will lift off from here in the United States. and it'll be from Launch Complex 2 at the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. If you're on the eastern coast of the U.S. and you've got clear skies, take a look out over the ocean, see if you can spot Electron flying into orbit tonight. T minus 60 seconds.
So you're aware of what's about to happen. The engines will ignite at T minus 2 seconds. Liftoff is scheduled for at 0, and it should hit max Q around 1 minute 11 seconds after flight. So while we're listening for the engine sound, you guys can keep track of where this flight is at.
Real quick, y'all, I am going to bring up our field mic, but we are next to a loud generator. So you will hear some generator noise long before the rocket sound gets to us, but that's going to come up shortly.
All right, 30 seconds to go. Everything on track for launch.
You can see the brightness has been turned down. Electron's barely visible. I love all the red dots around there for the turtle protection.
And
rocket has pressurized for flight. T minus 10 seconds. Camera is ready to track. 3, 2, 1. We have engine ignition. And we have liftoff for the first time ever. Rocket Lab's Electron rocket lifts off from the United States and Wallops Flight Facility. Getting some onboard camera views now. Electron has lifted off and is now pitching downrange, headed out over the Atlantic Ocean on its way to low Earth orbit. Stage 1's engines will be adjusting their throttle levels as the vehicle approaches max Q, the point of maximum aerodynamic stresses on the vehicle. You can see it heading towards the altitude where that contrail is forming behind the rocket exhaust.
Gorgeous.
Over 4 kilometers in altitude at that point. Downrange.
Vehicle performance appears nominal so far. Vehicle is now through max Q. Great tracking from Pat out there in the field. Again, thanks Pat for rolling out. Looking good. We got to keep an eye out on that potential jellyfish effect too, especially a little bit later in the flight here.
You can see it flying past some stars now.
Yep.
So a reference of what's coming up next, MECO for this one is scheduled for 2 minutes and 26 seconds after flight. That will be followed by stage 1 separation from the second stage, and 3 seconds later we should get the stage 2 Rutherford engine ignition. And then the fairings will pop away about 20 seconds after that.
Wow, look at that. The engine expansion there.
Yep, as we see on... Yep, go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say, as the vehicle's getting higher up in the atmosphere, you could see the plumes getting dimmer and dimmer and expanding because the air pressure is so much lower up there compared to where it is at sea level.
Basically a mini version of what we're used to seeing on Falcon 9 night launches.
And you can see the plumes of those 8 outer engines as well, kind of expanding and in their own plumes. Coming up on main engine cutoff here, or shutdown of the first stage. And there it is, main engine cutoff confirmed, standing by for stage separation. There it is. And there we go, Rutherford vacuum ignition, the upper stage of Electron now firing.
Look at that
nominal
engine
stage 1 flight. Yep.
Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful.
You can actually see the lit up limb of the Earth there right during stage separation. Not really visible now, but hopefully we get some jellyfish action if the sun treats us right.
Standing by for payload fairing sep.
Pat still has it out there.
Yep, Pat still got the upper stage as
you can see both stages. It looks
Yeah, you can see the first stage falling away there right underneath.
tiny
Oh,
behind
yeah.
it.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That
I'm
upper stage.
wondering if
some of
that's
that's a fairing?
Fairing, maybe?
Yeah, it's
Could
rotating,
be.
which could mean the fairing.
Looks like fairing sep.
Fairing
Yeah.
should have separated right about now. I know the Rocket Lab feed is going to be behind reality there. But yes, we do have confirmation of fairing sep.
Wow.
So it
Yeah,
could
that's
actually
two
be a
dots.
fairing rather than the first stage.
Yeah,
Yep.
we've got 2 or 3 distinct things there, it looks like. I mean, the first stage and the 2 fairings, maybe.
Going
And still
past
the
the
second.
star there.
Yeah, look on the middle kind of your screen towards the bottom. There's 3 dots.
Look.
Oh yeah, all right. So that's
Gorgeous.
definitely first stage and both fairing halves. And then
Yeah.
the top brightest object
Unbelievable.
is the upper stage, which is still firing. That's awesome.
Wow,
You could-
great shots, Pat.
You can see a
Yeah.
little exhaust or something. Like, you'll see just a little bit of the exhaust there.
I was
A
going to say,
little
it's
bit,
like
yeah.
a micro
Stage 1.
jellyfish.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And that would make sense. So it would also make sense to see the fairings under these conditions because, again, we mentioned the potential kind of jellyfish effect, and the fairings definitely got high enough to get into sunlight as well as the upper stage. So that's what you're probably seeing, some sunlight reflecting off the fairings as they fall away.
Yeah. Hey, if y'all went outside and were able to see it in real life, tell us in chat if you got eyes on it
Yeah.
yourself, if you were around.
Oh, there's nothing quite like seeing a launch from, a several hundred miles away. It's cool seeing it in person, but man, several hundred miles away, just seeing the jellyfish in the sky, gorgeous.
Yeah. There you
There's
got
the
the
onboard.
Earth in the background there.
Mm-hmm.
If I may point something out here, on the right, you see that little blocky thing. That is
Yes.
a battery. So the second stage is all of the turbo pumps are electric. They use a high voltage battery. So at about 6.5 minutes into flight, there are 2 of those batteries. So once the first one is depleted, it will separate away, and the second one will kick in, which is called battery hot swap.
Look, is the dot chasing it? Do you see the dot that's just out the side of the engine bell? Is
The
that like an
blue
exhaust
one?
effect? Yeah.
That feels like a lens flare to me, if I had to guess, because you
Maybe.
could see the sun just barely out of frame to the bottom left.
Huh.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a lens artifact, if anything.
Yeah.
Especially because you kind of see it flickering on the bell.
Pat's still tracking it.
There we
Unbelievable job.
go.
That
It's
is
the tiny
excellent.
second stage of the small Electron, and this is like the longest we've been able to track a rocket in my recent memory, except for the stage is coming back, but whatever, that's a different thing.
This
Yeah, it
is
doesn't count. That's cheating.
A reminder, the
can't under-
tiniest part of this rocket is the second stage, and the whole rocket itself is only 18 meters. So the fact that we're still tracking it is unbelievable.
You can't understate how minuscule this thing is and how difficult it is to track. Excellent work from Pat there.
So we're coming up on that battery hot swap. We got the graphic from Rocket Lab showing you on the left-hand side of your screen. And as that bar fills up, they'll get to the point where they jettison that first battery because, again, you don't want to carry the added mass and the added weight of a empty, dead battery the entire way to orbit. So they jettison that. It's on a suborbital trajectory. It'll disintegrate on reentry. And they'll have the remaining batteries on board to power the remainder of Stage 2 flight.
Yeah, I believe this is the first rocket that uses the electric turbo pumps in orbit or in space.
Yep, on the first stage too. I mean, the first stage engines, you don't see the battery hot swap because the first stage fires, quick enough that it's not worth having a separate staging event to jettison dead batteries. But
Still, Patrick has got the second stage in view.
Standing by for hot swap.
Over Africa now or something. It's not actually over
That's
Africa.
not yet.
wonder if we're gonna be able to see the hot swap. It might be like a little glint, but maybe.
Yeah. We should see it on the stream, though, hopefully.
Coming up on the hot swap there.
Has it happened? Because we're past the time of scheduled hot swap.
The onboard cameras are usually a few
Yeah,
seconds
yeah.
behind on Electron,
Yeah.
so not
Yeah.
necessarily a reason to worry right now.
we'll stand by. I should expect it any second here.
By the way, getting word from Alicia where it was slightly cloudy, but she thought she may have seen it through the clouds. I still
Stage
haven't
2
seen
is
that hot
the-
swap.
Yeah, me neither.
We're at T plus 8 minutes according to their clock. This was supposed to happen at T plus 6 minutes 45 seconds.
Yeah, and their clock is going to match. Oh,
There it
there it goes.
goes.
there you
There it
go.
goes. That is. I wonder if the graphic was just wrong because that was
That
like
could be.
soup. That's more delayed than it normally is.
Yeah.
Much.
It could have
They
been
confirmed
maybe-
on Twitter that it happened successfully. So
That's the
alright.
important part.
But stage 2 continuing on into orbit.
Yeah, according to their scheduled timeline, that is, we should
Yeah.
have Seco second engine cutoff at about 45 seconds from now.
And that'll be followed pretty much immediately by separation of the kick stage, which will coast carrying the payloads the rest of the way for a quick circularization burn, which will be well after Seco.
And beautiful shots here. The alternate camera. I believe they have 2 cameras on the second stage, one on each side. So we're getting the dark side camera now. And man, beautiful plume there. I love seeing little spark effects and things coming from the igniters or the injectors.
Yeah.
But we are again coming up on second stage shutdown here, and there it is.
Look at that.
Excellent. Oh, that is beautiful. It's like a pumpkin floating in space.
And we should have kick stage separation shortly.
Yeah, we don't always get a camera view of that, but they should be able to confirm. We'll keep an eye on the official comms to get them to confirm that, as well as a nominal orbit as well.
Yeah, some launches do have an onboard camera from the kick stage, and when they do, those are an absolute treat.
That is the launch control room there in at Wallops. There'll be both Rocket Lab and NASA and Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport personnel there. Rocket Lab does confirm nominal orbit after Seco, so trajectory was nominal. We'll stand by to wait for kick stage separation confirmation as well. That should be any second now as well.
Yeah, all the numbers that we saw in terms of altitude and speed looked pretty much right on where they needed to be.
And we do also have confirmation of kick stage separation. So the upper stage has successfully reached the initial parking orbit as the kick stage and payloads now fly free and coast towards a circularization burn. That'll happen at about T plus 50 minutes. But all told so far, a perfectly nominal ascent for the first mission there from Launch Complex 2 at Wallops. There's a graphic from Rocket Lab showing the location of the kick stage and the payload flying east from Florida, and you can see it's about to go beyond that red circle indicates their tracking range. So the stage will re-enter a kind of acquisition of signal near the southern tip of Africa there, and they'll have comms with the payload again. But until then, the vehicle will just be coasting towards its circularization burn.
Has it tried Tinder?
We weren't going to get past that without Sawyer saying something.
Yeah, you know what? That was my fault. I shouldn't have expected it.
You set him up.
I really, really did.
Knocked it out of the park. Well, depends on your definition of knocked it out.
But Das, I do believe we should go back to that upper camera view because, I mean, if you want to say the line, you could definitely say the line.
Go for it.
You can say the line, Thomas. It's okay.
It's Das's favorite view on launch day, an empty launch pad, because the rocket launched and part of it's in space, part of it already came back down. That's how staging works. But successful early ascent so far. We're going to leave the final confirmation of the kick stage's final burn and payload deployment to Rocket Lab because that's going to be a while from now. And looking at an empty launch pad for 40 minutes would probably get boring. So really quick, I will speed run these last couple of super chats and things that have come in here. Tim Simpson with some support from New Zealand. So much appreciated, Tim, and appreciate the message there. And Eric saying, is the magic tracking cam there? I don't know if Pat's tracking camera is magic, but it worked pretty well, so I'll give him that. Pat, I do want to say thank you so much for rolling out there today and a wonderful job on the camera track.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me, and what a great launch. I mean, wow, that was really awesome. So,
hey, Pat,
thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in.
How did it compare with the Antares you've seen launch from there? Like, was it louder? Was it softer? Did it sound different?
Definitely softer, but not anything to shake a stick at. Honestly, it was pretty nice. I mean, it was very, very bright, like Antares. And the sound, I guess, maybe a little bit softer, but definitely still packed a little punch from about 2 miles away. So very cool.
Great job on the track, by the way. I think everybody in chat was saying you kept that thing in on the camera for the longest time. So thank you so much again. Keep going, Thomas. Sorry I jumped in.
No, you're good. Thank you again to Pat. And Das, thank you for operating today's stream, offering some commentary as well. Always good to have you around.
Hey, always a good time. First Rocket Lab from Wallops, and I hope I can make it up there and see one at some point.
Oh yeah, maybe we got to pick a time where it's not January though. Pat braved
Yeah.
the cold one for us, and we greatly appreciate that. I think I'll probably go up in June or something.
There you go. This summer trip.
Really quick, also we had some other commentators offering some commentary and expertise for today's stream. We had Ian Atkinson on comms. Ian, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
So glad to be here and so excited to see another rocket launching out of Wallops. Love to see it.
Yeah, we'll have to stay tuned for access to the next one. Hopefully, hope to do this, make this a regular thing, you know?
Absolutely. When Wallops live?
Wallops Live. Oh, we got to get work on that, I guess.
Mid-Atlantic
Live.
Mid-Atlantic
Chincoteague
live.
Live.
There you go.
Live.
We'll need a
Mars
camera
Live.
that points towards the ponies that live on Chincoteague. That'll make Chris be happy.
We can't call it Mars Cam.
It's 90%
Ah.
a pony stream, and then every now and then a rocket launches.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, we'll make millions. It'll be fantastic.
Yeah, pony cam, parentheses, and launches.
Sawyer, thank you so much for hopping on as well. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. I mean, the title of this is Virginia is for launch lovers, and I think this mission absolutely proved it now that we have another orbital class rocket taking off from Virginia.
Sure thing. Folks, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you dropped us a message, if you asked a question, or if you just tuned in and enjoyed the show, we really appreciate you spending your evening with us. But I think we're going to let you all go. Thank you all so much for watching. For our continuing coverage of the mission, check out both Rocket Lab's Twitter and also follow at NASA Spaceflight on Twitter or check out nasaspaceflight.com. And stay tuned for future space news. But until our next broadcast, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
I'm going to roll the music since we had tech issues at the beginning of the stream.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right,
Go for it.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
Chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight outside SE off. Say again, SE off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Wait, isn't Rocket Lab supposed to be in there somewhere?